I'll be ready to take your questions and respond accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles Sangweni. As you all heard, I don't think he had significant to add in addition since the Ministry and TPDC, but their role is very clear. Their role is to advise on the upstream activities, monitoring of performance, financial performance of the PSA, and to regulate the LNG. He's talked about the wells which have been drilled to date, which is 96 wells. There's also one thing that I may have to correct, if I'm not mistaken, is he's talked about the bidding round. The bidding round, in fact, it's supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, to be immediately after the PSA review, but not 3 years. Am I right? Or it could be. Or it could. So you're talking about the timing. Am I right?
Yeah, the timing. Yeah. Thank you very much. We are talking about the timing, but there are other issues besides the review of the PSA.
Okay.
That's why I said it's about 2 to 3 years to come.
2 to 3, okay, I get it. So I just wanted to make sure I clarify that point. So really is the country is open up for investors. And we are now going to welcome my good friend to come and give the other aspect of, now is a technocrat now.
Wait a little bit. Tubadilishe presentation.
Sorry, it's a mistake one. It's not dorsal, yeah? So don't get it wrong. Thanks. It's now Shell's time.
Here we go. Mabibi na mabwana, itifaki imezingatiwa. Habari za asubuhi. Nimefurahi kuwa hapa leo. Nipo Tanzania kwa wiki mbili sasa. Nimeanza kujifunza Kiswahili na tumaini siku zijazo nitaongea vizuri zaidi. Natumaini taniruhusu sasa niongee Kiingereza. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very privileged and proud to be here with you as I move into my new role within Shell. And I would like to take this opportunity to just also focus a little bit on safety, as my colleague has already mentioned. It's very important to Shell. And I just want to highlight the fact that we have the road safety campaign going on in Tanzania. I understand that there is going to be a closing out week soon to be had in October. But I would like to just take your attention and encourage you to, when you go home today, think of me and think of any action you can take today to improve the risks you run when you drive on the road today back to your family and friends that I'm sure want to see you come back safely and sound. So please take that into account going forward. This is the legal disclaimer that really effectively says, do not trade on what I say, please. So as I said, I'm quite excited and proud to be here. Although Shell has been in the country for about 80 years in Tanzania, we together with our partners, Pavilion and Ophir, found significant gas in place offshore Tanzania in the deep waters in Block 1 and 4. We drilled 22 appraisal wells and exploration wells, and in that process we spent more than $2 billion. In order to progress and develop the project further, we're currently working with the government on the legal, fiscal, and commercial framework that covers the full value chain in order to develop the project in such a way that Tanzania can compete with other nations that are developing their resources as well, such as Qatar, Canada, the US, or as we've just heard, Mozambique. The opportunity for Tanzania in a world that has increasing demand for energy, and specifically for natural gas, is very large and also very attractive as we're relatively close to energy-hungry Asian markets. But why would you say do we, as Shell and others, focus so much on LNG? Shell has a lot of experience in deep water gas development around the world, including the US Gulf Coast, as well as Brazil and other locations. The development of these resources is extremely capital intensive. And as our industry colleague from Mozambique just said, you need very strong buyers and buyers with very high affordability that can take gas in very large quantities, that can engage in long-term contracts with you to develop these types of resources in a cost-effective way. Just think about the enormous cost it takes to drill more than 2 kilometers deep in an ocean floor. The global LNG market that is very deep, as we say, or can take a lot of volume and can afford these higher prices for gas, is therefore a very attractive destination for the gas of Tanzania. Effectively, it allows you to be independent of a destination or a specific customer. And the value of the resources that are then developed and sold into these markets can be shared back into economies like Tanzania, as well as an associated development of domestic gas. The additional benefits that LNG development would bring to a nation include, of course, the jobs that are quite numerous in amount. We're talking about thousands of jobs in the construction phase, hundreds of jobs in the operations phase, and now I'm only talking about the direct jobs. You can easily add multipliers when we think about all the indirect jobs that are on top of that. The revenue split, of course, with the government through taxation and otherwise, skills and workforce development for local employees and businesses, socio-economic development of the region, as well as attracting further direct investment from overseas investors. And as I mentioned, it provides the opportunity to, while you're developing the deep water upstream resource, to also develop the domestic gas. Here we go. Oh, thank you. As I mentioned, Shell has an enormous amount of experience in the deep water development, but what we also have is an enormous amount of experience in LNG. In fact, we're the largest, effectively market-leading IOC in this domain. As you can see on the map, Shell has spread around the world and has many liquefaction projects that we're involved in. As my colleague Martin yesterday said, Shell has a leading position and is really eager to keep that leading position in the industry by growing its portfolio. We've been partners in many facilities around the world, and we would like to add Tanzania to that portfolio. Only recently, and I'm talking about a year ago, Shell decided to, with its partners, make an investment decision in LNG Canada, and I've just completed a 5-year cycle with that project to get that project over the line successfully. As I mentioned, to get a project of this size to a positive investment decision, it takes an enormous amount of work. So Shell, together with its partners, CNPC from China, Petronas from Malaysia, Kogas from Korea, and Mitsubishi from Japan, we decided to invest in the Canadian upstream and develop an LNG facility for them. We would like to replicate that practice here in Tanzania by collaborating with all stakeholders. I've been personally a witness to the impact that an LNG project can have on the local and national economy, as well as the environment, whether that was Europe, the Middle East, or Africa. One thing that I really want to learn from what I want to at least convey to this audience is the enormous amount of stakeholder engagement and relationship building you need to do before you embark on such a project. We had a saying in LNG Canada, and it said, build relationships before you build a project. It takes an enormous amount of trust between typically a host government and the IOC that has developed over time to work together to develop these projects competitively. You have to work together on the framework that governs an investment of this size. It is important to remember, given the capital investment on these projects, that the investment horizon for investors needs to be very long, stable, predictable, and transparent. As well as working with a government to get a good view on how is this resource competitive with other projects around the world, and driving for cost competitiveness together. I believe, and Shell believes, that we can do something similar in Tanzania. So now on to local content, key theme for this conference, and a theme that Shell around the world is heavily committed to. Currently in country, our focus is on workforce development and strengthening the skills required for an eventual project phase. Examples that we have in Tanzania range from education support, from vocational skills to secondary school and higher education, as well as entrepreneurial programs we support. And of course, we focus on our own staff. I'm very proud to have a team of highly energized and highly capable colleagues around me, of which 90% are from Tanzania. And in order to grow the team and keep these percentages high up, we have to put significant efforts in our own staff and our own staff development. So please meet Catherine, Oscar, Frank, Asimwe, and Claude. They're all from Tanzania, and they've run through what we call our graduate program. And as you'll see on the slide, what we've done with these individuals, we provided them opportunities around the world to learn from the operation. We believe that learning in the oil and gas industry often comes to being close to the action, because that's where you learn fastest. It's very hard to learn from a book. The ultimate objective, of course, is to bring these individuals back to Tanzania and work for us when we develop the project further. I do recognize that Claude is in the audience today, so I would like to just ask him to stand up and give him a round of applause, because I think it's a wonderful journey he's been through as well. So in summary, Shell is very happy to have the Tanzania project in our portfolio. The fundamentals of the gas resource are very strong. We're working collaboratively with government and other stakeholders to take us to the next step in project development, and we plan to do that through meaningful stakeholder engagement in pursuit of a stable, clear, and transparent framework and drive for this global competitiveness. Delivery of mega projects like LNG Canada or Tanzania should not be underestimated. It takes very significant work, collaboration, and most importantly, trust by all parties involved to make such a project go ahead. Through my personal experience and the experience of the Global Shell Group and our partners, we are very excited to make this happen. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Frederick. My next guest, you're very fast like me, is Sivest Vest. But just before I welcome Svest, there was a few points that Frederick mentioned in terms of most of these projects are capital gain intensive. And that is something that I keep hearing from time to time in terms of decision making, in terms of what you call it, involvement, of commitment. So I just thought I would touch base on that. And there was also another issue of collaboration and trust, which has been stressed, and the importance of building relationship between a local, and as well as building capacity of the universities, as well as people like yourself who have just been added value. So I just thought I would cheers on that one. Please, Svest. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to talk about the Block 2 project. Equinor and is in Block 2, off the coast of Lindi in southern part of Tanzania. We are determined to make that into value creation for the country and for the companies. These gas resources should not only benefit the current generation here in Tanzania, it should be also for the next generation and the next generation. To support the huge investments in the offshore gas development, we need the revenues from the LNG sales in addition to the sales in the local domestic market and potentially regional markets. We are now in a phase of negotiating the host government agreement with the government. It is an important step in realizing the project, and the agreement is a key to unlock further progress. We are committed to continue until we find and agree a framework that is good both for the country and the companies. We will then be ready to start investing into the project development. So let's see. Since we signed the PSA in 2007, we have drilled 15 exploration wells and made 9 discoveries. We have made investments of more than $2 billion. Based on these discoveries, we have matured the concept for how the LNG project can be developed. Tanzania LNG is regarded as one of the most important projects within Equinor, and it has been given a high focus in our corporate executive committee. We acknowledge the importance of the gas developments for Tanzania, and as operator for Block 2, Equinor fully shares Tanzania's vision of develop the country's socioeconomic transformation. The LNG project will be a cornerstone in this transformation. This is an overview of the Block 2 development, how it can look like in a few years from now. We need 13 production wells in the first phase of Block 2 production. The reservoirs containing the gas are situated from 300 to 3,000 meters below the seabed, which is at 2,500 meters seawater depth. As my colleague Frederick said, development of deep water gas resources in areas like this is one of the most capital intensive businesses around the world, even more capital intensive than oil developments. We are looking at investments of almost $20 billion over the lifetime of the project. That translates into around 50 trillion shillings. The onshore development is planned just north of Lindi. You can see it on the right-hand side of this picture. TPDC has secured the site. The site is large enough for the development of all the 3 blocks that we have found discoveries in now, blocks 1 and 4, and block 2. Block 2 can produce 7.5 million tons LNG per year, in addition to the domestic gas. This equals 240 kilograms of liquid gas every second, around the clock, for more than 35 years. 240 kilograms. The government is set to receive the majority of the net profits from the project, while the companies carry a higher portion of the risks and most of the investments. This will be a huge industrial project, and it will require 400 to 600 employees in the operational phase. That's the 35 years period. In addition to these direct employees at the plant, which will operate the plant, there will be thousands of jobs in the supplier industry and in the ripple effects around the plant. Using experience from other comparable countries and comparable projects, the number of such ripple effect jobs are in the order of 12,000 to 20,000. Tanzania LNG will be an important step towards industrialization of the country. People will be educated, they will get training through this project that will help other industries and developing the gas industry further. And with the outlook to commercialize the current discoveries, companies are again likely to look to Tanzania as an attractive exploration location. So let's see. This is the story about Snow White. It's an LNG development in the far north of Norway, not far from the North Pole. I moved up there to the small town of Hammerfest in 2005 to be responsible for the startup of the plant. The town of Hammerfest was worn down, and people had been moving south for many years to find work. Shops were closed, buildings were falling apart. Then, because of the LNG project, the town and the neighboring counties flourished. The project work was exciting, but what I remember the most is the transformation of the communities. Many people got jobs at the plant, but it was the ripple effects that were truly amazing to see. All the new shops, new cinemas, restaurants, taxi drivers, new hotels, and the local community invested in new schools, roads, and houses for the immigrants to the area. And the indigenous people in Norway, the Sami people, they could sell their reindeer skins and their king crab catches to higher prices than before. The project was really a game changer for the people living in the area. I was there for 5 years and experienced this amazing transformation. On this slide, you can see suppliers, names of suppliers that established themselves in the Hammerfest region to deliver services to the LNG plant. These are large international companies, but also small Norwegian local companies. And as you can see, most of them came towards the operational phase. The plant started producing in 2007. It is these ripple effects that are really powering the economy of the local community. We very much appreciate the strong relation between Tanzania and Norway. We have had a strong relation for almost 60 years now, and I would love to come back here and celebrate the 100 years anniversary 40 years from now. I would like to bring my 4 daughters and hopefully many grandchildren and tell them about the time when we built a strong relation with the government and the people of Tanzania and decided to develop the first LNG plant in the country. Asante sana.
Thanks very much, Svist. Very detailed, very graphical, and it's eye-opener for some of us, especially when I looked at the video and I look at some of the eyes of the certain people here, especially those service providers going, what? So, yes, same thing is be repeated, capital intensive. We talked about the experience that Equinor has in Norway in terms of growing the people, growing the industry, as well as the growth and giving opportunities for service providers, contractors, and engineers in order to transform their lives, especially looking at the last few clips of the presentation where it's enormous project. Everyone is a benefit. It's a multiplier effect project. And I like the word that he used, game changer. We all want to be the game changer. I want to be part of the history. I'm sure so is you, that we were there those days to make change. Without you time, allow me to welcome the last but not least, a speaker, a good friend of mine, was also Patrick Boyce from Dotsol. Karibu. And you better speak Swahili, because you've been practicing this.
Marcus? Good. So, good afternoon, everybody. Habari. My name is Patrick Boyce. So I'm going to take the cowardly route with the Swahili, and I'd like to introduce you to one of our drilling engineers called Marcus Obed-Luega. Marcus is a graduate of Dodoma University, spent some time on internships with TPDC, and then joined international oil companies and developed 4 years overseas, and we're taking some of the fruits of that experience back to our project. So it's a great sign of the building capability of Tanzania.
Thank you very much, Pad. As he said, my name is Marcus Loga, Doso drilling engineer. Za sahizi, mabibi na mabwana. Karibuni Doso, na Patrick hapa atawapitisha katika operations za Doso kuanzia ilipoanza na mpaka sasa hivi, plani iliyopo na nini Doso inafanya haswa kwa hapa Tanzania. Without further ado, I'll let Patrick take you through the overview of Doso.
So the aim this morning, or this afternoon I should say now, is just to go through an update on the block, just the work we've done, the technical evaluation and our plans going forward. So for your history, Dodsol and our partners, TPDC, acquired the block in 2007. Since then we've done the geological modeling, established all the baseline studies. We've conducted 1,800 line kilometers of seismic work, and in 2015 we drilled 3 wells in the initial block. Do you want to do the curve? Yeah, this one. You do it for me. So move on to the next one. So the initial block you'll see here, this was the original block. The map you see orientated is the bottom is south, the top is north. So we relinquished the bottom part of the block based mainly on environmental regions and proximity to the Selous National Park. And then we ended up with this block here, which is a current block. So 2015, we drilled 3 wells, Matini, Mbuyu, and Mamba Coffee. Mbuyu was a discovery, but an unconventional play, which we didn't feel we had the time or the resources or potentially a market to fit that play. So with hard heart, we relinquished that portion of the block and kept the western side of the block. The western side of the block covered Mtini and the Mamba Coffee discovery. So our forward program is to drill 3 wells in this area to appraise the Mamba Coffee discovery and also to explore some of the further potential targets deeper in their stratigraphy. So, with Mamba Coffee, what we want to do really is appraise it and then move towards development. So our whole focus really, the most important, is the health, safety, environmental and social aspects of the case. We will align. We've met most of our colleagues from TPDC, Pura, MEC, NEMC. We've had lots of advice. We've found out it's good to listen and not come with any kind of preconceptions of what's required. This process has helped us just to deal with the stakeholders on a local level, on a governmental level, and on all aspects of the contractor community. The team itself, we've learned a lot actually in the last couple of days. We have a strong Tanzanian team, but a small team, as you would expect for this stage of the project. Our aim is to develop that forward, and we've actually met candidates in the last 2 days, and I would encourage everyone to please speak to your networks and say we are looking to grow not only our own team, but also the teams of our subcontractors and other entities involved in the project. Right, the first well we're going to do is Maruka. Maruka is south of Malandizi on the road out of Dar es Salaam. It's a very geographically attractive block to go to markets at a later date and very close to the Dar es Salaam markets. This is targeting the appraisal zone from the Mamba Coffee discovery and also the deeper targets, transversing at the bottom potentially an oil zone. But that's very early days to crow too much about that. With all of the wells, and starting with Maruka, we plan to test the wells. There'll be initial full logging, MDT work. We plan to do DSTs and full well test package. In each of those wells, we will pick the most attractive of the zones. There's various well integrity issues why we would not test all zones and commercially. Then based on that, with the first well, Maruka, complete, that will determine our 3rd well in the campaign, whether it's a relatively shallow Mamba Coffee appraisal or if it's a deep Mamba Coffee alternate appraisal / exploration well. So the 2nd well in the campaign, we move north to the Fukuyoshi area. Have you got the map there, Marcus? Is it in there? There you go. Go back on. Can you move back?
Just likes to keep you waiting.
He does, he does. Keeps me on my toes. So you can see here at the top of the map, at the north end, Mtarawanda. All of the sites are relatively close to the Tanzanian infrastructure blacktop. We have to cut some roads into various places, but not a massive civil exercise. Obviously, the community engagement's a big part of that. Things like the schools, the local community. Some of it is pineapple crops we found where our site will be. I've learnt last week that there's female and male pineapple plants, which I didn't know about before, so all very interesting stuff. After Mtarawanda, we returned to the Mamba coffee for the third well again in the campaign. Right, with the actual location of the wells, you can see some of them there, but next slide. But just one thing I want to leave you with, and I'll give you an idea of, is the Mamba coffee discovery. You'll see the final bush there at the end, the Lucky Bean, I think a well-named plant. That was next to our Mamba coffee well. So that's the inspiration for some of our well names. So it's based on the aspect of just reminding us that we're custodians of these sites. We're custodians within the community. We're there to protect the environment and exceed local regulations where we can to meet the standard that meets Dodsl's standard. The other plants are the peacock flower, the maruka tree, and the matarawanda, the golden bean. So I'll tell you a secret that the matarawanda we can't find near Matarawanda yet. So we have to go searching in the forest to find a Matarawanda tree. So we'll see. Lastly, just to say thank you for the opportunity, and please encourage people to contact Dodsal, potential employees, ATOGs, etc., for contractors, and see what we can bring to the Tanzanian community.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I think it was very clear and very straightforward that Dodsal are committed to more activities in Tanzania, and also their focus on development of the people in Tanzania, the resources that we have, in order to add value to, first, our people, the business, in a win-win situation. And just without forgetting, of course, the managing director is here from Dodsal, and they have a wealth of experience in the Dubai. Dubai was built on the oil, and oil. Yeah? And here you are today. So I think with the wealth of experience from Dubai, with the Dodsal, you will help us a lot. And final but not least, he talked about the opportunities which are currently ongoing. And I am very pleased to say that we, and I, as a chairman of Association of Tanzania Oil and Gas, we have been talking number of days, number of weeks to ensure that these values comes to local. And even the day before when you came, just before the, the Congress, His Excellency came to Tanzania. We had a long discussion in terms of wanting to procure everything from local, every value to local. So thank you very much indeed, Dodsal, for. So without due respect, I hand you back to the Master of Ceremony. I know we've taken a bit of a time, but it was very important. Thank you so much indeed for listening. Cheers.
All right, thank you very much. Could you gentlemen please stand and line up? We'd like to take a picture of the moderator and the panel. And once again, our hands to you. Thank you very much. And in the meantime, I'm also requesting the spotlight session, the presenters to please step up onto the stage. This is Andy J. Hanna, Managing Director, Pan-African Energy, and Bizimana Ntuyabaliwe, Deputy Managing Director, Pan-African Energy. Please, your hands, ladies and gentlemen, as we switch from one to the other seamlessly. And do you want to join the picture? Definitely not. Okay, no. You remain with your own exclusivity. Not bad at all. All right, thank you very much. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us. Spotlight, very important. The past presentation also has set us up for lots of discussions. Once again, promoting the business lounge and other lounges that are available for my exhibitors. Please use those. Oh, sorry, please. Yeah, we need to take those down. All right, so who's up first for the spotlight session? The long-term supply in Tanzania. Very interesting topic.
Mabibi na mabwana, habari za mchana. Na wengine wadogo zangu mambo. On behalf of Pan-African Energy, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for this wonderful opportunity to talk to you today about very important subject, gas supply and demand. And I want to say something before we go into the issue. The problem of speaking the second day of the Congress is that most of the things would have been said already, but we're going to try to be brief. We're not going to repeat. And if we do repeat, it's because it's very important. So we'll be brief, but we feel this topic is very important, and the importance of usage of gas for now cannot be overstated. We have seen, we have heard since yesterday from the minister responsible for energy. We have heard today from the acting Director General Pura that the gas we are supplying for now comes from 2 fields. And this is only a fraction of what has been discovered. We are talking about 57.5 TCF, but we are only producing from 2 fields, Mnazi Bay and Songo Songo, which is only a fraction. But the gas is used to power, for example, recently, the total gas being produced now contributes to more than 70% of grid power generation. That's significant. And also it's used in industries, more than 45 industries. And here, I'm not only talking about industries, Pan-African supply, I'm also talking about what TPDC supplies. It's more than 45. And these are big industries, big producers, big employers, big taxpayers. So it's important. Clearly, as the first and one of the 2, or if you wish, 3 current gas suppliers in Tanzania today, and I want to bold here the first. In the first day, you heard the minister saying that Pan-African Energy is the first gas supplier. And we are very thankful for, and we appreciate that comment. So we feel that Pan-African has had and can have major part to play in this challenge. Before we look at the issue, however, a quick review of what the Songo Songo project, the project that we are so proud to be part of, has achieved to date. So on this slide and the next one, you'll see some highlights of Pan-African's energy time in Tanzania. I'm not going to read. I'll leave you to read through it. But I want to highlight or take note of a few things there. It's worth noting that Pan-African Energy spent 10 years negotiating the Songo Songo PSA from 1991 to 2001. And during that time, prior to approval, the PSA was referred to the government for review on 4 separate occasions, as well as to the Commonwealth Secretariat for fair value review. So it was a thorough negotiations, win-win. I think that's the point we want to make there. And you can see, in Swahili we say, mambo mazuri hayataki haraka. We took 10 years to negotiate this. Eventually, on signing the agreement in 2001, the company was able to set about establishing the Songo Songo gas project. And I have to say this, together with our highly valued project partners, including but not limited to TPDC, Ministry of Energy, Songas, TANESCO, and the World Bank. By 2004, the infrastructure had been delivered to establish what we believe was the first gas-to-power project in East Africa. If there is anyone who knows that there was gas-to-power project in East Africa before that, please educate me. Able to deliver low-cost, reliable source of energy that delivering low-cost, reliable source of energy that led to displacement of expensive imported liquid fuels. And by our calculations, which we think they are very conservative, has saved the country almost 7.5 billion US dollars. Some of the people might think it's a small amount, but it's a big amount. And some of my friends will say, oh, how many bottles of beer can that amount to buy? Or other people can say, how many dispensaries, how many hospitals can that build? So, but it's a massive. For a small field like Songo Songo, to be able to save 7.5 billion US dollars to date, it's massive. It only shows that, imagine when the big gas comes on stream, it's going to be heaven in Tanzania. Sorry. How do I go back? No, I want to go back. I want to go back. Awesome. Okay. I have everything here. So, no, I have to show you. Can I go back to? Okay. Slide 3, please. Sorry for taking your time. Yeah. So, as you can see there, so successful was the project that it was expanded to see gas sold to TANESCO. We started negotiating a long-term contract with TANESCO, 2008, for increased power generation. And for a period of time, other independent power producers. And alongside today, 40 major industrial customers in Dar es Salaam. And these industrial customers are from different sectors: cement manufacturing, breweries, cooking oil, textile, hotel. That's why I'm saying is they're big producers. They employ a lot of Tanzanians. They are big taxpayers. So as you can see, we have been able to contribute to acceleration of industrialization and job creation along the way. And if you talk to some of our industrial customers, they will tell you that because of gas, they have been able to reduce the cost of production, and actually it has enabled them to compete in the export market, but also compete with cheaper imports in Dar es Salaam. Also, Pan-African Energy, with our project partners, have been dependably processing and supplying gas successfully in Tanzania for over 15 years. And I'm sure there are some people who didn't know that we have been supplying gas Tanzania have been supplying gas for 15 years now. Pan-African Energy has grown from a company that understandably depended heavily on foreign experts to today a company that is made up of almost Tanzanians. 98% of our workforce is Tanzanian. And maybe some of people that do not appreciate the percentages. So in absolute terms, the numbers are, we have 100 workforce, only 2 are expatriate, 98 are all locals. And all these local staff, some of them are filling vast majority of senior appointment through the company. I can name few. We have finance director who's Tanzanian. We have our very important position, our site managers in Songo Songo. They are all Tanzanians. We have our reservoir engineers. We have our petroleum engineers, and some of our local managers are actually here with us today. If you can stand up so that people can see you. So Songo Songo project has been undeniably successful when viewed from the perspective of its impact on the nation to date. And while PAT has only been part of that success, we are very proud of the company's achievement so far. But as successful as things may have been, that's history. As we turn to the future, I would like to welcome my colleague, or my boss here, Andy Hanna, to come and explain to us what may be ahead of us. Karibu sana.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Busy has already pointed out, some of what you're about to hear, you will have heard yesterday, but I think the message is so important, it's worth hearing it again and again and again. But actually, based on what we heard yesterday, if you take some of the themes, transparency, collaboration, industrialization, environmental protection, local content and skills transfer, you could probably take some of this presentation to be a high-level case study of what really can be achieved here in Tanzania when projects are given the time and the freedom and the cooperation to grow. Some of what I'll talk about might seem relatively insignificant in terms of numbers, production, investment, and the like, compared to some of what the companies that are investing here in the room today. But so much has been achieved through the Songo Songo project that I think if you cast your minds forward to what might be reasonably achieved through the LNG projects, we all have to agree that Tanzania stands on the cusp of something really quite special. But that is the future. We need to talk now about the here and now, because if we neglect that, the building blocks that will allow the LNG project to be fully exploited domestically will simply not be there. Now, before we get on with that, you've already seen this once, but we need to look at the production profile. The success of the Songo Songo projects over the past 15 years can be seen in the production profile seen here. It's not a perfect trajectory, of course. There have been technical issues, there have been infrastructure limitations, and there has been a certain amount of uncertainty as to what part of the field we would develop and when. It reflects the nature of a project that leads the industry in a new nation, that is pioneering, and that reflects the risks that are taken by both the investor and the host nation on projects like this. The red line that you see there, and incidentally, we've recently pushed through that capacity through an extended agreement and increased MDQ with TPDC. So we've recently produced up to 127 million cubic feet per day. But the line that you see there, the red line, doesn't tell the full story of the value of this project. Yes, there has been growth, but the green line that you can see there represents something that is called protected gas. And that is up to 45 million cubic feet per day that Pan-African Energy has to produce every day before it can start selling what we call additional gas. That protected gas is produced on a no-cost or a no-gain, no-loss basis. It is provided to Songas for power generation, to support some of the processing capacity at the Wazo Hill cement factory, and for village electrification. But it is that gas, which represents almost 50% of the gas we've produced to date, although it wouldn't show that there, that has led to such cheap power generation here in Tanzania. And it is that fact that allows this project to reach millions of Tanzanians and numerous small industries. Cheap power, cheap electricity that is dependable. In reality, it is exceptionally difficult to truly measure the full impact of the Songo Songo project, but it can be witnessed in the physical, tangible changes that we will have all seen throughout Dar es Salaam in particular over recent years. It is wider than cheap electricity. We've already mentioned the vast savings that the project has delivered, about $7.5 billion against importing HFO, and we know that it now enables cheap electricity production. But where would the industries that we support, the 40 industries, where would they be without that gas? Now, absolutely, they would almost certainly still exist. But would they have grown so quickly? Would they be exporting so extensively? Would they be employing so many people? Would they be competing on international and local markets quite so effectively? Possibly not. We estimate around 27,500 Tanzanians are employed through the industries that are supported by Songo Songo gas. 27,500 jobs. If you think about that in terms of direct employment and then all of the secondary and tertiary employment that might follow on as a consequence of those industries, it really is a remarkable impact. As mentioned already, the Songo Songo project was the first of its kind in East Africa. As such, it has led the way in creating a small but growing oil and gas service industry in the country. It's created demand for skilled tradesmen and skilled tradeswomen, and it's enabled the rapid transfer of innumerable vital skills to local people. The displacement of liquids has also brought about other benefits that we can't necessarily see on a daily basis. With around 50% of the CO2 emissions of coal and about 70% of the CO2 emissions of diesel, natural gas has undoubtedly had a positive impact on the environment in Tanzania. It may be a small impact, but it's a start. And if you look at the pilot CNG project that was developed alongside TPDC, I think back in 2011, and the intention that the country has to expand that, and the intention PAT has to support that, then I think you can start having an even greater impact locally and potentially regionally in the not too distant future. Alongside all of that, we've spent about $3.5 million on CSR projects. Again, that might not seem like a lot in the context of other companies here, but we've built schools, medical facilities, that includes mortuaries, hospitals, maternity wards, kindergartens, and the like. We've developed a pioneering English language training program for Form 1 students in secondary school, and I'm really quite proud to say that quite recently this year, we've agreed to start supporting and sponsoring a charity called, forgive my Swahili, Tumaini La Maisha, which I'm led to believe means their lives matter. And if it doesn't, PAT is looking for a new CSR manager tomorrow, because it's him that told me that. Tumaini La Maisha is a children's cancer identification and treatment charity, focused primarily in Dar es Salaam, but with PAT's support, we intend to start putting in satellite treatment and diagnosis facilities, initially in Kilwa district, and then hopefully more expansively within Tanzania. And I think that is a really important step to take in supporting the lives of the children here in the country. There's little doubt that the Songo Songo project, which is a collaboration between private industry and the government, has had immeasurable benefit to Tanzania. And yet, we are not even partway there. There is so much more to come. So what more can be done? To date, the company has produced something like 408 BCF of gas. In the main field, as at the 31st of December, there was around 700 BCF of producible gas remaining. In 74, Songo Songo 1 well was drilled in Songo Songo North, a separate section of the reservoir, proving that gas was there. And recent analysis suggests there's about 362 BCF of producible gas in that part of the reservoir. So there is a lot more potential to come. But it would be unreasonable, or it would not be unreasonable, I should say, to ask whether that potential that remains in that field can really be brought to bear. Of course, that depends on the future demand of gas, which can be uncertain, but we'll look shortly at that. But it also depends on the infrastructure to get that gas to market. Now, what this slide shows here, and I'm just going to stand around the side of the microphone, a number of things here. Sorry, can we go back to, please? Apologies. Thank you. This section here, which is not particularly well highlighted, on the left of the screen, shows the current deliverability from the 5 producing wells in the Songo Songo field. That's 5 of 8 wells. The next block along from that to the right shows the capacity of the processing facilities on Songo Songo Island. About 102 million cubic feet per day through the Songas-owned infrastructure and 140 million cubic feet per day through the NNGI infrastructure on that island. The next block shows the pipeline capacity to get that gas to market. Now, that is the pipeline capacity based on the limitations of the export pipelines of those 2 respective facilities. It does not take into account the vast, something in the order of 784 million cubic feet per day, delivery capacity of the main 36-inch pipeline owned by the government. And then on the right of the slide, you can see the current spread of where that gas goes relative to the markets. But what that slide actually tells you is that the current supply from the field is just about meeting demand, but there is vast processing capacity and delivery capacity to get so much more out of it. And if you put that together with the reserves that I've just spoken about, then you have to agree that that potential is there. And while I recognize the importance of looking for investment in the country, some of those investors are already here, and we're ready to do some more work. We'll now take a look at the short to mid-term demand. It's only PAT's conservative view, but it seems to be shared by our friends in Wentworth. And its potential demand out to 2026 only, which is the end of the Songo Songo license, October 2026, as it stands. It is, however, based around detailed discussions with Pura, TPDC, and TANESCO, as well as some of the major industries that we support. The potential for growth has always existed in Tanzania, but the government's development of the national gas infrastructure has transformed the potential to realize that growth. Of course, the growth profile remains uncertain, but there are several areas seen here where it can and where it will occur. Looking at the 3 main areas for growth, the primary source is likely to be the introduction of new or expanded gas-fired power generation facilities, presenting a significant uplift in demand, which includes the Kinyerezi 1 extension project, which we know is stalled but nearing completion, potential expansion of other power stations, and the development of new stations. And what you see on that slide there is actually only part of the story. It doesn't reflect what the Permanent Secretary discussed this morning of the Kinyerezi 3 project, the Kinyerezi 4 project, and other options such as that. What it does do is potentially, just looking at this conservative view, more than double the demand for gas for power only over the next 5, 6, or 7 years. The second tangible area for growth is in industrialization, supply to industries. Now, we anticipate that that growth is likely to be in the order of 2 to 3 million cubic feet per day. 2 to 3 million cubic feet per day. That is not a lot. But when you think that the average industry uses about 0.1 to 0.15 million cubic feet per day, the number of industries that can be supported by that small growth is transformative, again, in terms of jobs, tax dollars, and the like. And finally, there exists the potential for transformative growth as a consequence of the strategic plans or discussions taking place between the government of Tanzania today and regional partners and potential strategic investors, urea, methanol, Kenya, Uganda, and the like. Of course, the timing and magnitude of the demand is subject to some uncertainty, which has led PAT to develop two potential demand profiles. You've got the probable demand profile shown here in green, that green line in the middle of the chart, and then the possible or the stretch demand profile reflected by the red line at the top of that chart. Those profiles are superimposed on top of the 2P production profiles for Pan-African energy, represented in that dark red block at the bottom, and the reported 2P production profiles from the Mnazi Bay block, represented in that orange section of the slide. Immediately, it can be seen that not only the possible, but also the probable demand profiles call for more gas than is likely to be available on the current plans from the two currently active gas producers, PAT and Wentworth, Morrell and Prom. It should be noted that the profiles do not take any account for any additional development plans outside of the two existing suppliers, and we have heard some of those plans over the last couple of days, and I recognize that. But it's fair to say that whatever those plans might be, they are not going to be delivering gas, if you look at normal project timelines, within the next 18 to 24 months. We do know that both gas suppliers have the potential to increase their production, subject to a number of commercial, economic, legal, and political issues. I wouldn't be quite so bold to suggest how Morrell and Prom and Wentworth might go about expanding their business, but for Pan-African energy, the most immediate source of significant increase in supply is through the development of the Songo North section of the Songo field. If both suppliers were to develop their respective potential, some of the gap between demand and supply could be closed, as seen here. The blue section that has just popped up there is represented by what could be achieved, on average, from the Songo North block. And what might be achieved by Morrell and Prom and Wentworth is shown in the yellow section that has just popped up there from the Mnazi Bay block. It is illustrative only, and the profiles and timing of all of that could easily change, subject to further development of the demand. But what is critical is that if the demand profile is accepted, or something like that demand profile is accepted, we are already facing a supply shortage potentially as early as 2020. With options to close that deficit requiring considerable investment and time, at the very best, we might not be able to close that gap before 2021 or potentially 2022. And that is if we started developing that potential today. Unfortunately, and I have to be honest, on the part of Pan-African Energy Tanzania, that sort of development is not something that we can undertake immediately in the current circumstances. Development of Songo North will take about $125 million, rough estimate, and about 2 years to develop. With 7 years remaining on our license, and potentially with only 5 left if we developed it today and took 2 years to get gas to market, it is just simply not economically viable to undertake that as things stand. But it is an investment that we want to make, and we hope that we can start serious negotiations and discussions with the government to unlock this potential before that supply gap gets wider. As can be seen, however, if unlocked, the potential discussed here cannot meet sustained demand and gets nowhere near the stretch potential should some of those strategic initiatives come off. And incidentally, the stretch potential that you see doesn't include Kinyerezi 3 and 4. It does include one of the potential strategic investors that are being discussed. It doesn't include any sort of exports of gas within the region. So actually, that stretch potential is genuinely conservative. Ladies and gentlemen, I recognize that I stand between you and your lunch, and that is a dangerous position to take. So I'm going to conclude. This has been a really brief overview of the Songo project the benefits and values that it's delivered, and the potential it has to achieve so much more. If this comes across as a Pan-African energy success story, well, unashamedly, it is. But it has been a joint effort, and you have to recognize the massive part the government of Tanzania has taken in this project. Our friends in TPDC, in Pura, Iwura, in TANESCO, and in Songas, and of course the World Bank. They were all part of this. It was their collective vision and cooperation that got this project off the ground. And I think, if you could indulge me, that deserves a round of applause. But we're only partway through, and we've now seen just how much there is that could come. We firmly believe the Songa Songa project, alongside our colleagues from Mnazi Bay, has the potential to meet a large part of the short to mid-term demand over the next 7 years and potentially beyond. PAT recognizes that there are challenges ahead to unlocking that potential. They are, of course, technical, they always are, but they're also commercial, legal, and political. We don't shy away from those challenges. We welcome fair-minded and transparent discussions and reviews to ensure that all parties attain fair value from these contracts. We want to move forward with this project and be part of the solution to deliver Tanzania's vast potential. We want to be part of the transformative period that Tanzania is entering, and we believe that we can do that. However, with a potential gas shortfall around the corner, we need to start working on that potential today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions, there are some contact details there, otherwise you'll find Orca and Pan-African Energy employees in the lobby later. What I would say that is, if you recall yesterday morning, we were advised that the investment environment is conducive and predictable. If that is the case, I see no reason why we can't get on with this project now. Thank you.
Very powerful, don't you agree? Our hands once again. Thank you very much. Andy and Bismana, if you would stand for a picture. And may I please request Excellency Abdul Samad, please to step up onto the stage. We're going to whet the delegates' appetite, I believe. All right, thank you very much, Abdul Samad. While our spotlight presenters are exiting the stage, your introduction, please.
Okay, very good afternoon. I know we are a slightly bit delayed for lunch, but due to very substance and good context, which we all have been waiting for, this is why we've had a very good big panel that taken the lunch time. But I'm very pleased now, I'm standing here we are going to reschedule slightly bit so that we have an important guest. Now we have, allow me to welcome His Excellency, the Governor of the Bank of Tanzania, to come and give his keynote speech. Professor Loga, karibu sana.
Good afternoon. I guess if the previous speaker was risking to stand between you and the lunch, my risk is much higher that I will be holding you to wrongful confinement at this time. But I believe that you will brave my short discussion. Honorable ministers, deputy ministers, permanent secretaries, excellencies, ambassadors present, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me express my gratitude for the honor bestowed upon me and the bank to be invited to this very august gathering. I guess the expected role is to talk a bit about the comforts and the prospects of being in Tanzania or operating in Tanzania as far as financing of enterprises is concerned. I know that the membership to ATOX, one of the most challenging issue that we are facing is the issue of financing of enterprises. A bit of knowing what is going on might probably give more confidence and appetite to keep on pursuing the development of enterprises in Tanzania. Let me assure you all that Tanzania is probably in Africa now your best destination for investment, and very soon after implementation of a number of measures, also the best place to carry on business. Tanzania in macroeconomic balance is in fact performing very well. Using the well-known methodologies, we are growing at the rate of 7%, which is quite a good pace of growth. We don't have serious problems with the inflation. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we have had our inflation at the minimum rate of 3%, but not exceeding 5%, which makes it a very stable area. We are enjoying very good exchange rate, which does not fluctuate much. Over the past 5 years, the maximum fluctuation that is taking place is not over 2%. It means that the economy is quite supportive to business enterprises and investments. In the past, there have been problems of the country's ability to service foreign loans. I would like to say that we do not have that problem now. And very often now, many foreign enterprises come to me seeking letters to open offshore accounts. I usually explain to them that we don't have any problem of repayment of loans. The country has more than adequate forex reserves. And we are looking forward to apportion some of our forex reserves now to develop the country's gold reserves. And if I may share with you, over the past 5 to 6 months, the Bank of Tanzania has never sold forex. Why? Because there is enough forex supply within our banks. We are now net purchasers of forex. We don't sell forex anymore. We simply purchase forex to boost our reserves. So we do not have worries of repaying foreign loans. The challenge that we are dealing with now is to strengthen more the banking sector, to make it more efficient, to mobilize finances and make available finances to the private sector so that businesses can access lending at the most affordable rates. And of recent, lending to the private sector has been on the rise. We moved from negative 1.7 in January 2017, and we had gone above 10% of lending to the private sector. And there are all indications with the measures the central bank is taking that the lending to the private sector will increase substantially. The Bank of Tanzania is taking measures to make sure that the banks are expanding. We do not want to have small banks that cannot support the needs of growth of the private sector. We are working with the Tanzania Bankers Association and would like to increase cooperation with the Tanzania Private Sector Foundation to create milestones that will see that certain outcomes are achieved within a determinable future. For instance, containing of the non-performing loans that have been debilitating our banks. I believe that with the good prudential rules, we don't have to have future worries about growing NPLs. We can do without the NPLs if we take measures that will ensure that our banks function professionally and do have honest staff who discharge their functions with integrity. Otherwise, if we don't take such measures, then our banks will be open to fraudulent promoters who may become quite disastrous to the banking sector. We are fostering growth of the banks, and our banks are now reorganizing into much bigger banks in response to discussions with, between the central banks and the banks. We are taking measures to ensure that banking staff attain professional standards and are well vetted to ensure that the banks do not suffer risks from lack of integrity among banking staff. We are taking measures to ensure that the banks are availed with adequate liquidity. For instance, the measures we have taken of recent, which make the banks access, have the ability to collect more foreign currency, enable us to ensure that we can improve liquidity of the banks in exchange for the building up of the country's forex reserves. We are creating effective infrastructure to enable the banks to access vital information that will lead to increase in lending in a more affordable way. We know the interest rates are still a bit high. But with the measures we are taking, the risks to bank is diminishing. It means it is possible very soon to further decrease the lending rates. The Bank of Tanzania took measures to reduce lending to the banks so that the banks can also reduce rates to customers. As well, there are measures that aim at increasing the capacity of the banks to lend through mechanisms that the government is putting in place and which make available to the banks the necessary finances in order to improve or to grow the ability to lend. The bank has taken measures to establish credit reference bureaus, and very soon we can have online searches of an individual's credit status so that the banks are more comfortable that these individuals, their credit worthiness can be ascertained very easily and with improved reliability. We are taking measures to ensure that we expand, we facilitate identification together with the National Identification Bureau. Now, very fast, there is growth in the issuance of the national identification numbers. With these numbers, it means one can easily obtain a digital ID. But using these numbers is enabling the bank now to establish a financial services registry, which maps countrywide using geodata to ensure that you can locate where you have financial services and you can easily be identifiable in order to access financial services. We are also taking measures very soon to establish the national switch under the Tanzania instant payment system, which will make financial transactions very cheap for all. And that means the ability of the banking sector to mobilize deposits. And we are taking measures to make sure that the ability of the banks to mobilize deposits is not affected by practices or other inconsistent rules that shy customers away from the banks. We know very well that the confidence customers have with their banks attracts them to use the banks in financing transactions and keeping their money with the banks. And the ability of the banks to mobilize deposits, it means more private sector entrepreneurs or enterprises will have access to financing. We know that the government cannot provide finances to the private sector members, but we know the banks can do so very effectively if the right environment is put in place. At the end of the day, we want to see the banks growing, the risks diminishing, and the banks moving into practices that are more supportive to lending to the private sector. We know that the oil and gas sector is going to create a lot of opportunities, but these opportunities will be lost if our enterprises are not capable to access financing. And this is our objective. At the end of the day, we must make sure that our banking sector is effectively supporting growth, is effectively supporting enterprises. With such an environment, we believe the Bank of Tanzania will have discharged its role in creating the best environment that will sustain the growth of the private sector. I thought that I should confine myself to what the bank is doing to support growth of the private sector in Tanzania, rather than hold you here talking about my functions as the government's banker. I will do that when I meet my clients. But in this setting, I think this is the context that is more relevant to you. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause. We truly appreciate your presence, Professor Luoga. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to lunch. I believe the two gentlemen are standing and requesting us to stand. Sirs, please, let's not sit. Let's go straight to lunch. So bon appetit, see you soon. And it's exactly 14 hours. Can we do 45 minutes? There's not too many of us today. And let's be back, and then we'll cascade the program as fast as we can. And so may I please specifically request the next session chair as well as the panelists to be back before everyone else. Yes, lunch is upstairs. I believe it's on the 3rd floor. So we may exit through the doors left and to the left. That's the best way to go. Rather than the doors at the back, please exit towards the left. If you have the energy, you can use the stairs Otherwise, two sets of lifts on the left-hand side. See you soon. So we'll